Hi guys. So today I wanted to do a quick video about a conversation I heard the other day. And keep in mind this video is from a devout Christian perspective, and it deals with some controversial topics. So I believe everyone's entitled to their opinions, and that's okay. And I think we should share our opinions. So I'm going to share mine. The other day in church, I heard someone talking about certain laws that were going to, in essence, take God more out of schools, I believe. Or it was that idea of taking God out of something secular, and that people were disappointed about that. And I pointed out that, a biblical principle we should live by is that God encourages a separation, not encourages, God understands a separation of church and state. Jesus said, give to God what is God's and give to Caesar what is Caesar's. Do not expect the state to act as the church and the church to act like the state, because they are not the same thing and they shouldn't act like each other. That being said, when we start talking about separation of church and state, a lot of devout Christians, especially highly conservative ones, will say we need more God in our schools, or we need more God in our state, like laws and things like that. And I politely disagree with that. I believe that the state serves a purpose in our modern day, but it becomes dangerous when we say we need more of the Judeo-Christian God in schools, because if we're going to embody equality, which is a Christian biblical principle, we have to give that option to all gods and all belief systems in our secular state environment. So it starts becoming dangerous when you say, well, okay, if we want prayer in schools, the Satanist has to be able to pray as much as the Christian should be able to pray, and things like that. And I think that's not really what we're looking for. I believe that we should encourage and live out biblical principles in all areas of our lives, which is a biblical concept. We should embody God's word and God's principles in our lives. If we are in politics, then absolutely we should embody those in our job. However, we need to look at principles like equality, charity, hospitality, and things like that, rather than the blanket insertion of God into secularism, because that's not really what it calls for. So we really need to live out those principles, because assuming we are, and I used these terms incorrectly earlier, patriotism and nationalism, when we say rah rah America is great, which I firmly believe it is, given its checkered past, that's patriotism, saying America is great, and I am loyal to America, which I am. When people say rah rah America is greater than every other nation, see, that's nationalism, and that's getting into zealotry, which is not good ever. Like, even biblical zealots, unless they were prophets, like the Maccabees, which are not biblical, but they were Jewish, isn't really good. You can be righteously angry for God in certain circumstances, but you shouldn't say that other nations are not as good as yours as a blanket statement, because that is untrue. Other nations have very positive qualities, and so does America. So I believe when we talk about separation of church and state, Paul writes about, if you spread your message or God's message and people don't accept it, then you just shake the dirt off your feet and move on. Christians are not called to shove their religion down people's throats. We are not. That is not a biblical principle. God says he will judge the nations with that proper noun, he pronoun, I should say, proper pronoun. He will judge people, not us. It is not our job to judge people. It is not our job to shove God down people's throats. I often talk about, it is not my job to convert people, and that is not a biblical principle. It is my job as a devout Christian who loves God to spread God's word and to witness to other people about what I believe based on biblical ideology. But it's not my job to convert. It is God's job to convert. If people say, I don't want to talk about this right now, okay. It is unloving for me to keep talking about a subject that bothers people if it's inappropriate. Although I do not believe in blanket tolerance, I do not believe we should tolerate poor choices. That's not biblical. If we see someone that we love harming themselves in some way, it is loving to point that out and say that I love you, and I don't want to see you make these bad choices. But if, with like my friends that aren't Christian, they know what I believe, and I've witnessed to them before, but it's not my job to beat them over the head with it. So that is, I would say, well, thank you for listening to my TED Talk, but this isn't about technology or, TED is technology and, what does the E stand for? I don't remember. So I won't say that. But anyway, that is my little spiel on separation of church and state. I believe that the state needs to be able to operate independently in our modern age of the church. That doesn't mean that we should not encourage biblical principles in our everyday life. Like I said, equality, charity, hospitality, things like that. So anyway, let me know what you think. You're welcome to respond in the comments here on YouTube or on Facebook. I'll post it in both places, and love to hear from you guys. So I will talk to you later.